there was a lot of things you had said that got me thinking about, like, I think how I wanted to start off the conversation with you, but there was so much that I actually learned from you about how you conduct yourself when it comes to preparing, and then what you are learning about what you've had as far as matches are concerned, what you could have done better, the methods you go about in figuring out how you could do better, like listening to the sound, watching the videos without the sound, and then watching the whole thing with sound and whatever else. So for some reason, I found that rather unique, but at the same time, it showed me one thing about you, which is the fact that some people who may not know that you just got into pro wrestling fairly recently, within the last 2 years. So the amount of dedication you've devoted to, keep getting better with that, I think some people may not realize that, that's something that takes a lot of time and takes a lot of effort, considering you also have a full-time show as well too, and traveling and all that sort of stuff. Um, and I think I understand more so now, especially after that evening, why your demand for you has gone up a bit more and more. I can see that in social media as well too. And I think the last time you and I talked about that, you had said to me before that I need an assistant, but I don't have assistant money. And as soon as you said that, I was like, okay, so this is going to just keep going up from here, from what I can gather here. So I'm wondering if anything has changed for you so far now, as a result of, like, from the last time we had met. Um, do you still feel that trajectory kind of going upwards, where the demand for you is getting higher, and then how you're dealing with the amount of time you have to devote to pro wrestling, and then at the same time keeping some time for yourself as well too? Because on top of that, you also handle your own social media as well too. Um, I suck at social media when it comes to that. I'm not as bit nowhere near as busy as you are, but I can only imagine the amount of stress that could come with that. So I'm wondering, like, if you feel like you've got a better handle of yourself now, working all these different areas of your professional life as well as more or less your personal life as well too.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of hard being a one-man show.
Right.
I've even added more to my plate as far as pro wrestling is concerned. I started making my own gear. I have started learning. I haven't touched a sewing machine since I was like 10. And I got a sewing machine gifted to me off my Amazon wish list. And I guess that was the signal to start making my own gear.
Right.
I also apologize if you can hear my dog. He
That's okay.
apparently sees somebody outside.
No worries.
But yeah, no, I had a part-time job. I ended up quitting that because it was just too much to handle everything. And now in 2024, I'm starting to finally be in the green for wrestling as far
Mm.
as money goes. So I'm spending less than I'm making. Um, and last year, I was paying for all this different kind of training. I went and I trained with Dr. Tom Pritchard out in
Right.
Tennessee, which is not cheap, but definitely worth it as far as getting the basics down. And now I continue to train somewhere that's more local to me. Um, that way I'm still getting ring time in and still doing all that. But it's definitely still really hard.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's like trying to handle, especially with social media and stuff. It's like I constantly am like, oh yeah, I need to be posting, and then I'll be really good about it for like a week, and then all of a sudden I haven't posted in 2 3 weeks, and I'm like,
Mm.
okay, that's not how we do this. We got to keep going.
But is
It's
that important though? Because one thing I've there's social media for me is kind of like it's ebb and flow. I'm sure as you already know, but it's like I should be, technically I should be posting more, but I don't, because I'm like, if people are interested, they'll be interested. I guess I don't have that type of that form of discipline of, like, I do what I love, but I don't feel the need to go so hard on this angle here to promote and promote and promote, because it kind of there's more work into that than there is on what I actually love doing. So for you, do you feel like that's kind of like a necessary evil? And if you feel like it is a necessary evil, which I'm sure it is, but do you feel like it's worthwhile to invest that much time to do so, where you take a gap and all of a sudden you're like, I got to get back into it? And do you notice a difference when it comes to, if you when you post something, pro wrestling related, do you see that, okay, so there are people that are responding, and there's more of a demand in this respect here, that I think is, I should continue sticking with it? Or is it kind of like ebb and flow, and then, well, the more I stick with it, maybe I'll get more out of it?
think that especially now, it's super important. The whole thing for pro wrestling is half of it's what you look like.
Right.
And two, the networking. Instead of just, okay, I've met this person at a show and now they're putting my name out to this person, this person, this person because they saw my work. They got to meet me and see who I am.
Right.
It goes way beyond that because
Right.
now, even if it's just my friends sharing my posts, right? Well, then now that's post being shared to their friends, and their friends, if they like are interacting with it, it's going to get shared to theirs, and it just kind of grows and grows and grows. And
Right.
I feel like most of people who reach out to me to try to book me as far as promoters go have reached out to me via Instagram or Facebook, and it's because they've seen like, oh, hey, I saw your match with whoever, and I really like this, or I really like your look. I think you would fit in here really well, or against this person. And so I do think it's really important. And I feel like the more, and it doesn't even really have to do with followers or anything, but it's like the more followers you get, the more it's going to be shown to all these other people. Are there bad sides to it? Yeah, there's a bunch of weird people that try to call me on Instagram Messenger, and I get notifications all the time for like just random stuff like that.
Yeah.
But once you can filter that kind of stuff out, and it's like, oh, these different promotions are reaching out to me, or even I've found promotions that I want to work for, and I've reached out to them on Instagram. And then it's like all of a sudden they're seeing a message from me and they're like, who the heck is this? They click on my name and they can see a bunch of stuff. If I only have a couple posts or like not anything of quality, it's kind of like, oh, well, next.
Right.
But if I'm posting stuff of quality or of any kind of anything,
What kind of quality are you referring to? Are you talking about like match quality or like video quality?
just
What are you referring to?
I feel like it could go any way. I love to like show my personality on there.
Okay.
Um, so not even just like, hey, I'm a good wrestler, but like, hey, I'm also a decent, kind of cool human. Like I think I'm cool to
I love
work
how you
with.
promote yourself like I'm a great wrestler, but I'm a kind of a decent person. Like that's kind of a weird dichotomy to promote yourself.
Right. But it's like I think I'm a cool person. So it's like I feel like there's a lot of wrestlers that like just aren't cool people and they kind of suck to work with. But it's like if you can see, I have a look. Like I accept that. That's how I got into wrestling because
Right.
someone saw me and was like, "Hey, have you thought about wrestling?" So I understand that I have a unique look, sort of. Um, but it's like, okay, now on top of that, people enjoy talking to me. They enjoy getting to know me. They enjoy seeing me at shows. Like I love getting into locker rooms at different places and then being like, oh my gosh, Audrey, oh, it's you. Like, oh, it's so good to meet you. I've seen you on social media. I've seen you here, here, here.
Hmm.
And it's like, that part's really cool because it's like that genuine, like excited to be there and see me instead of like, oh yeah, like they seem like they're kind of in like not, I don't know if I could talk to them, whatever, but
Do you have like any concerns down the line? Like, because right now you mentioned because I know the story you're talking about where someone reached out, looked at you and thought you'd be a great pro wrestler because of the way you looked, and that obviously worked in your favor, and it's been successful from what I've discussed and from what I've seen, from what you and I've discussed, and from what I actually seen in person as well. But did you ever consider at one point somewhere down the line, maybe one day I might chop the dreads off and go for a completely different look, change the style a little bit because after a while I might get bored of this stuff. And if I do that, and I stick with this path here, what effect will it have on more or less the business for myself? Like, has that ever come to mind, or is it one of those things that you just don't think about, and then when it comes, maybe you'll deal with it?
I definitely have thought about that. I decided a while ago when I got this hairstyle, I was like, I love this. This is the perfect situation for me.
Hmm.
As far as hair goes, because I was doing the whole shave my whole head and then really want long hair. So I'd wait, grow my hair out, got the long hair, and then be like, I want to be bald again. And then it was like the back and forth. It's awful. And so I'm like, oh yeah, if I cut 3/4 of it off and then also have long hair, I get best of both worlds. And I get to change the colors up and do whatever. But hair is hair and it
Right.
grows back. And I have thought about like, man, I wonder what would happen if I like changed it up or did something else. And honestly, I'm open to it if for some reason some company wanted to bring me on and they're like, well, we can only do this if you do this other thing, like I'd be open to ideas and open to different ideas of like looks as far as like
But
I go.
but you don't, so you don't have like a real like ownership with regards to, well, this is me, this is my mark. I mean, sorry, my trademark. This is my brand, if you will. So it's going really well, but you want me to change X, Y, and Z. So I mean, like, do you have a little bit of like that kind of ownership regarding, I mean, with regards to how much you were willing to change? But because I mean, eventually, the way I see it for you is that if you come to that point where Audrey Allen, the wrestler, is doing so well, and that look is the trademark, like when they see, a silhouette of you, they know, oh, that's Audrey Allen, right? And someone says, well, we want to change that. And you've made it this far. And then you think to yourself, like, why would I want to change that? Even if they're offering you, let's say, for example, a really good contract that offers great money and whatever else that would give you more incentive to think maybe I should consider, but business wise, this may tarnish what I've developed to get to this point. Like, I'm wondering if you have those little conflicts for yourself, that if it were to come to that, how would you prepare for that?
I mean, again, I'm still open to anything.
Right.
I try to stay open to it. I would definitely question why they think that that would be a good idea.
Yeah.
Um, because I don't really see a circumstance in which that would be a better idea. Um, so I think I would give a little bit of pushback just because one, I enjoy it, but
Right.
two, yeah, you are right. I mean, it's like people see me, and I'm not the only wrestler with most of her head shaved and dreads. Like
Right.
there's a few other women out there that I do get compared to all the time,
Yeah.
and so it's like I'm not the only one. So yeah, I would definitely give a little bit of pushback, but you gotta stay open, you know?
So when you get compared to someone else that has a very similar style to yourself, I guess my question is, like, is it because, not just because of the hairstyle, maybe a similar like style as far as like the colors and all that stuff is concerned, but are you also talking about size as well too? Is that also in comparison to, like, hey, if someone else looks just like you, same size, weight class, whatever else may, is it a lot of that as well, or just simply the look that's consistent across the board?
It's kind of the look.
Okay.
Um, I feel like it just varies. Sometimes it's like, oh, the muscle mommy vibes. Like there's a few of those, right?
Okay.
And then it's like, oh, girls with mostly shaved head and dreads, or like, oh, really colorful hair, or it's usually not all the above.
Right.
Usually like one aspect of it. I mean, there are a couple that I have not met in person yet that I get compared to, and I'm like, I wonder how tall they are. I wonder how we actually compare as far as like looks goes, because it's like they definitely go to the gym. They kind of have a similar hairstyle. I'd really love to meet them in person to be like, okay, are we actually really similar, or is
Right.
it just kind of that like social media, see pictures of it and think it's the same?
It's interesting. You pointed something out about the comparisons, like how the mommy muscle vibe and the whole thing. It's funny because I didn't think about this till after I met you, but I think I know I was really kind of figuring out like what your definitive persona is. Because, for example, like, Undertaker is a big example, like, the dead man, right? And he has
Mm.
different variations of the dead man, but somewhat, and especially towards the end, like, it's still consistent, but there's variations about how he went about it. Do you feel like you've got like a a pretty good grasp on, like, this is Audrey Allen's definitive persona? Because, in some matches you're the baby face, and some you're the heel. So it's like it's kind of all over the place. And I'm not saying in a negative light, but I'm just saying, like, it's there's no, like, I'm trying to figure out like what the definitive persona is, because looks wise, I mean, we know right away, for those who follow you, they'll know, okay, that's Audrey Allen. But persona wise, you feel like you've got that kind of pattern down, or are you still kind of working your way to figure out like what's going to be the persona that people say, that's Audrey? When I hear her, when I see that person, when see that kind of approach of how someone does something, Audrey Allen, like Stone Cold has that persona that everyone knows right away, and they hear that voice, they hear that a quote of his or whatever it is. Like, do you think you're getting to that point, or you're still kind of feeling out as time goes by?
Still working on that.
Okay. Do you have like an idea, like, as far as like what you're leaning more towards, or you're just playing it by ear as you go along?
I'm kind of just playing it by ear as I go along, seeing what
Okay.
works and what doesn't. I just finally started to actually start growing into what I wanted to do instead of what other people were trying to push on me in December of last year. So it's only been 5 months of Audrey Allen getting to actually be Audrey Allen.
Right.
Um, and trying to, it's like a constant metamorphosis of, okay, they pushed this character on me real hard, real hard, real hard for a really long time. Then it's like, oh, I actually get to do what I want to do now. So now I'm in that, okay, well, here's kind of the basis of what I want to do, right? I'm an annual pass holder. That's my whole shtick. It's a Disney gimmick and I love it.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
I love the fact that I can be that and I don't have to because everybody wants me to do the China thing, right? Big, bad, scary, mean. I don't know how to do that. Like I am a Disney girl. I am happy all the time. Like I don't know how to be mean and scary.
You ever thought
Um,
about villains from Disney films that you think that you can probably pull from?
yes, which is why like as a heel, I kind of try to pull from like Hades and like all the like sarcasm kind of
I see. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
feel instead of like the like silent scary type. It's more of like the like arrogant sarcastic
Like jokingly
vibe.
type.
Like so I still can like joke around and have me, but
Do
then
you think you
it's
can pull it off though? Like if you had, like if you let's say you tried that gimmick and it works well for you, but then you say I'm gonna just pull that off and see if I can do it. Like really do it. Like you think you would ever consider doing that? Because I understand what you mean, but I could see that for yourself. I can see why guys, well, people I should say, are pushing for that. But and I'm glad you're doing what you think is best for you. But there's even if I was a promoter, I'd probably be like, I think you can do that. Like I think you really should work on it. Don't make it a priority, but you should definitely develop that persona, work on it, and then down the line we'll see how it comes out. Like, do you think you would ever consider doing that? Like if you get something that down that you can feel confident in the saying that this is my perception of a hard nosed heel, if you will, you think you can get to that point?
I think I could, but I don't think I'd enjoy it.
Why not?
Just because it's not me. I've never been that type of person in
Well, I mean,
general.
it's a gimmick though. At the end of the day,
Right. But they always tell you like your character should be you with the volume turned all the way up.
Hmm.
Right. So that's what I've been told this whole time. And my original, like, I mean, V1 Audrey Allen was the mechanic. I mean, I'm pretty sure I actually have a poster right here. Yeah, this was, you can even see it. This was V1 Audrey Allen. She was a mechanic. And I mean, that is true to source. I was a
right?
mechanic. Yes, but they wanted me to be silent, scary, hit people over the head with wrenches. And I tried really hard, but it is almost impossible for me to not smile. I smile when I get nervous. I smile because I'm happy. I smile like it's really hard. And
Really? Okay.
so I think I'd be able to like put on the actor persona for it maybe, but I just feel like everybody sees tall, strong women and they immediately think like, oh, China. Oh, they have to be big,
Interesting.
badass,
Okay.
silent type.
Yeah, you got a
And
good
I
point.
really
Yeah.
like not fitting into that because that's all of them. And then it's like, well, why not be something different?
Yeah, you got a point there. I never thought of it that perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so then, well, let me get your perspective on the kayfabe thing because nowadays, wrestlers, pro wrestlers, should I say more specifically, are you know everyone knows it's a storyline they're following and it's a persona, it's a gimmick, and so on. Like more so now. I mean, even back then, but I guess now it's kind of like it's more accepted to have Stone Cold step out of character and have like an honest interview about whatever. But like what because you happen to come in at a time where the pro wrestlers can have a conversation and then not have to put up a gimmick every time they do an interview. So I guess my question to you now is that if you happen to come in at a time where, or at an era rather, where someone says you have the perfect look, and then you find your persona, you find the gimmick, but you got to keep that gimmick on everywhere you go. You think you would be able to sustain that for like a lengthy period of time, considering, the fact that it is you, but just amped up in some variation?
Yeah, I mean it's instead of having to pull like, okay, I'm this big badass, right? Like
Hmm.
I'm scary and silent. I would not be able to hold that for a really long time. I would not be able to do that. When it's me and doing my thing as Audrey Allen currently, it's just who I am, right? So I can speak in this manner, I can do these things, I can act in that way instead of like I can hold this because it's literally just me but way louder. So it would be really hard to like try and maintain something that I'm not and could probably put over for a little bit and like
Right.
kind of step into it when I needed to, but I wouldn't be able to sustain it. And I think that's where like I was struggling with is that they wanted me to do interviews like that. They wanted me to do all these different things like that. And it's like, bro, I can't. I'm trying, I'm putting in the effort because I was told I needed to do this, but that's just not who I am. And it was way outside of my comfort zone.
How are you dealing with the demands though now? Because again, there's a lot of more popularity with your name being associated with the various promotions. I mean, last time when you and I spoke face to face, I asked you like, do you? And I hope you can go more in depth with me this time around. But I had asked you like, do you think a lot of these promoters are booking you based on your skill or solely off your look? And at the time, you said, I think well, I think no, you did say it was mostly from your looks because they look at you. We can promote that. You can suck, doesn't matter as long as you look the part and you can act the part. Even if you're shit at the on the in the actual skill level, but as long as we can promote you, that's good enough for us. So now it's obvious that when you and I discussed in the senior matches that you really put in the work. Are you starting to see more now with regards to how you decided to pick out a persona for yourself that fits you, that you're able to set the standard for yourself? Has everything else kind of followed through with that as far as like when people are reaching out to say, hey, Audrey, we really love what you do with your skill level, apart from, you look the part, but, is there an understanding that you bring in quality that you, because if anyone's following you, they can see the evolution of your skill level. But are you noticing that that's kind of the response, more or less, I guess you could say behind the scenes, where people are reaching out to you or you're reaching out to them and they're responding to you like, yes, we know exactly who you are. So and so worked with you and they have said these things. We saw your matches. Great. We want you to come in and work with us. Like, is there a difference that you've noticed from the beginning to where you are with it now, as far as like how people are looking at you differently as opposed to before, where they're saying you look great as a mechanic and hit someone with a wrench? Is there a difference to that now?
A little bit, finally, just because I have been working as many places as I can and getting out there and putting my name and my brand out there.
Right.
Um, I do still find that a lot of if I haven't been booked because of someone that I've worked on a show with, like if they see me on social media or whatever, 99 times out of 100, it's we really like your look.
Right.
But I think what gets me rebooked at these places is when I show up and I actually do a decent job and I get to do my thing and they see me and they're like, oh, okay, like pleasantly surprised. Like that was different. And then I get brought back. And I think I'm getting now finally like, oh, hey, she's actually a decent worker. She can actually wrestle. She can actually do this. She has a unique gimmick. I think people are starting to spread that like word of mouth wise to different promotions. So I think that's finally starting to come into play now. Um, but yeah, I definitely still get booked just for my look sometimes. I would love to think that it's my wrestling and my character and that is it.
Right.
But
Well, I mean, but at the end of the day, it's obviously business too. So,
yeah.
the looks does sell, but does
Mhm.
that bother you at all when it comes to like, hey, we love the way you look? And because here's the thing, because I forgot to ask you this, I think the first time you and I spoke, which was that they they hire you based on your look majority of the times. And then slowly you mentioned just now that they're starting to turn around, like we know that you're really good. But with that being said, do you do you think that if if they're telling you they're hiring because of your looks, and then they see that you're actually doing a really good job. I guess my question to you is like from your perspective, because I'm not going to ask you to go share me dirty details, but what I'm really asking more is about like you go and do the event and you realize how certain things are ran, certain promotions, and then you realize how certain people just pick and choose talent based on for whatever those reasons may be, purely because of business or favors or whatever the case may be. And then they see you and they think, here's just another worker. We don't care if she sucks as long as she can get, make the place look good enough. And they see that you're actually really, really good. In your perspective, does that say a lot about the overall indie scene? About like if every place is like this, did you have any perception like, so why am I even here? I mean, because if it's going to be just based on my looks, and then later on they realize, oh, now we saw that you're actually really good. Yeah, can you come on back? Like, do you have a little like I don't know? Like, I'm wondering if there's a little bit of like not hesitation, but more like let's pump the brakes a little bit this time around. Let me see what I need to do to filter them out before I say yes. You understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah, I think I think the biggest issue is like if we think about women's wrestling
Right.
in general, it's still one newer. And two, when it started, it was literally all just about looks.
Right.
Like no one cared if the women could wrestle, right?
Yeah.
Now we're actually getting women who want to wrestle good and actually be able to wrestle and do these things and be as good as, if not better than, their male counterparts. So I think there's still that mix of these, especially promoters, right, that are in the mindset of like
The old school ways.
old school ways
Yeah.
and kind of learning like, oh, wait, women can wrestle. Like, oh, that's like a thing that they can actually do. I also think that as far as I go and looking at different promotions that I would like to work with, I can tell by their social media, by their different stuff that they put out there, kind of their vibe, like who they're booking, like any storylines that I can kind of see, and go through like different shows and matches that they have on their stuff.
Right.
Because I feel like you can kind of tell if you look at their last like couple shows what it's gonna be like, as far as like talent goes and different things. Because there's some shows that I work on that I really love. There are zero storylines going on, but they book decent talent and they put on a great show, and their fans are really fun. And it's like I'd rather do that and have a great match and have fun doing it than just kind of be put somewhere where even if it is a storyline and they want to, book me for these dates to kind of fill in this thing, but if they're just doing it because no reason, just because I look like this and I think that I'm going to fill this part, I feel like you can kind of start to tell. Like, obviously, it's not foolproof, but
Right.
I think you can kind of start to tell, like, okay, yeah, this one's not going to be good.
So do you do like any so for example, like if a promotion reaches out to you, especially one that you may have heard about or have heard about, do you do a vetting process for yourself to see, like you just pointed out just now, you look at their social media and see how they promote, who they're booking, and then you see clips of matches and pictures or whatever else. But have you ever gone through a lot like you do for yourself, where you listen to the match, you watch it, and you do that whole process to kind of see where you're doing better and worse, whatever else. Do you have that same betting process for other promotions where you let me watch an entire event and see how they did it from this particular time period and up to this point here? Like, do you ever done that for yourself to get a feel for what their evolution was like? If they have ebb and flows, or is it just constantly getting better, or got worse, then they got better? Like, I'm wondering if you have that for yourself, and if you don't, is it simply because of time that you don't do that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to like go through multiple events for a singular promotion.
Right.
Just when like, I mean, it's like if I'm booked at least on 2 shows per weekend, if not more. There's like last weekend I worked 2 shows in one day. So it's hard to like go through an entire event and then go through that process again for one single promotion. I try to, if not like skim some, just to kind of see the overall, like if especially if there's a women's match, I'll watch that. I'll
Okay.
watch it through, see how the crowd reacts, see what they're doing, um, kind of how all that goes. A lot of it though is me reaching out. If I see someone that I know on one of their old flyers, I'll reach out to them and be like, hey, what did you think about this show? What did you like? What you didn't like? How was the promoter? How was the locker room? Like how are the people involved in this show? And I feel like that's a better account because if I know that person that I'm asking, I can either take their advice with a grain of salt too, just because it's going to be different, especially if I'm asking a male counterpart versus a female counterpart.
Mhm.
But especially if I know women that have been on that show, I'll definitely reach out to them and be like, hey, what was your experience like? Just to
Do
kind of.
do you ever do you see in your perspective, do you see the indie scene actually getting better? Well, I guess I'm not sure if it's a fair question to ask because from the countless stories I've heard from wrestlers from way back in the day, that talked about the indie scene at that time, and they say it was a lot rougher than it is today. So obviously, in that sense, it's gotten better. But I'm wondering from your perspective, like if from what you're seeing from the ground up, that when you go to one promotion and you go to the next one, that there is a consistency of like some form of excellency that yes, they are really putting the effort in these areas that needs to be focused on. That when I first started, maybe you saw it and then it started growing from there. Like do you notice that there's a bit of like a um I guess in comparison to like more or less the big leagues, like do you see some sort of like positive outcome where you can see that this can get somewhere? Maybe whether you feel like you're going to go past that or not, but if you were to stay within this with this particular industry, that you can see it keep getting better from there, from your perspective.
I think it just depends on the promotion. I
Uh,
think there's no like overarching, like, oh, for the indies in general, I think it just really depends on the promotion because some of them will put so much money and effort into things that just don't matter.
like
And
what?
um, like especially I think of like what's the word? Like they want to be on TV, right? That's the goal for a
Okay.
lot of them is to get like a TV deal, right? So you have to look the part, just like a wrestler. I need to have professional gear. I need to look the part. I need to look like a wrestler. There's some promotions that just don't look like professional promotions. They can have the wrestlers and the things, but if they have terrible ring skirts, bad lighting, all the different things like that, but they spend money on like, I don't know, they'll spend money on like a banner in the back that doesn't get used, or they'll spend money on these other things that just like don't really make a difference. Like you can pay a really great photographer, but if you have really terrible lighting and a shitty ring, it's not going to look good. Even if the wrestlers are putting on a 5-star match. But it's like if you have that great photographer, then you also have good lighting, a good ring. It looks professional. You have a logo, you have a nice entranceway. Like it's like it seems like little stuff that it should kind of just not matter, but it really does. And I feel like some of the promotions that I've been working for lately, especially, it's like they see that. They want the TV deal. They want to be seen more. They want to look professional. And even if the company itself is not the most professional, but it looks that way, they're going to get more eyeballs on their product.
So when you're going through the motions, then going through the shows, like I think I asked this a while back when I first met you, but I'm wondering if anything has changed now when it comes to the amount of shows you're booked on, because you're like back to back shows. Um, I think at one point you mentioned to me in the conversation that it does get a little overwhelming and get tiring, and especially when you had a long drive and then having to do a match and then you do the meet and greet, and then by that point you're just like done with. Um, But I wonder if once you're going through all that, if it ever crosses your mind of not necessarily, is it even worth it, but more like, you know, can I see more coming out of it in that moment? Like, so you had a great show. You feel like you had to you put on a good match. Everyone put on a great match, but you're just so exhausted from all that. But do you still have that optimism? Like it's gonna get better from here. Like, do you still care that, or is it kind of just ebb and flow for you at that point?
I think so. I mean, I'm usually one of those people that my friends don't like carpooling with because I will stay through the end of the show and I will not get dressed I'll stay in my gear till the end of the show to meet people and be at my gimmick table. And like, not only am I just trying to sell merch, right? I obviously want to make some money,
Right.
but it's also the people that didn't really get to talk to me during intermission or didn't get to talk to me whatever else. And now they get to come up and meet me and see me in my gear, still like wrestlered out. And I get to make the connections with the people. And I feel like no matter how tired I am, even if I just get to meet that one little girl or the one parent that's like, oh my gosh, this was game changing, right? Like, I feel like that's always going to be worth it to me, even when I've driven 10 hours to wrestle and I got to drive back and because I didn't get a hotel or whatever. I don't know. It's like those are what makes it all worth it in the end to me. Like I do, and
So
obviously I want the money to pay for the gas to get there to do the
right.
thing better. But it's like making the connections with the people is how you're going to get further anyways.
So you love it though. I mean, like
Yeah.
you have a passion for it. So I hope this question is a fair one to ask because I don't want to give the wrong impression. But like, if it wasn't, because you've developed a love for it and you've developed a passion for it, um, I'm not saying again. I'm trying to really care how I ask because I don't want to come up the wrong way. But
Oh.
if it's not a bad thing. I guess because I don't want if anyone were to listen, they go, well, she'll do it for free. That's what I'm referring to. But if money wasn't a thing for you, would you be the type of person? Because I love it so much. I wouldn't. I'm not doing it for the money. Like, do you understand where my question is coming from? That
Yeah, I mean, my goal is to break even at least,
right,
right?
right, of course,
So that's why, like, when I tell a promoter, they ask me, what's your rate, right? That's one of the first questions
of course.
because, like, they have a budget. I get it. Also, female wrestlers are usually a lot more expensive than dudes. It's just a thing, supply and demand. Um, but I'll usually give my rate and then I'll say plus transportation, right? So that rate becomes negotiable just because, like, I need to cover gas money. If I could cover the food and the sheets stops to get all the munchies on the way back, even better. If I can cover now my expenses for making my own gear, I make all my own merch. Like I'm sitting at home doing the thing to make the hats and do like design the stickers and do all the things. It's like now it's compensation for all that time too. So it's like I've done benefit shows that I love because I support the cause.
Right,
And if I happen to be free that day, I may or may not come through, right? But
right,
it's like, it's still a business. It's
right,
still, I'm putting a lot of my time and effort. And I mean, now it's like I'm putting a lot of money into this. So I need to also get it back.
right. Well, I guess what I'm referring to is like because you answered my question, but what I'm asking is like if money wasn't a thing and you developed a love for it
Yeah.
and you got to the point where you know what I don't need the money, like, I'm gonna do it for because I really do love it. That I think that's what a little more I'm more leaning towards. Like if you develop the passion for so much to the point where like I'm not doing it for the money, I do it because I love it. See where I'm getting at?
I think it's still just like I would like to break even kind of thing.
Okay.
Like the amount of money that I'm putting into wrestling, even if it's because I love it, which is great, money is not a thing. I still
Right.
want to break even. If I had enough money to support myself, like which I do, I mean, I make decent money in my normal life, but it's like you can love something and not need the money, but breaking even is pretty nice because it's like at least it's paying you back for you paying it.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, would I love to just like I'll donate my time, I'll
Right.
donate all sorts of things. Like I do volunteer work, I do all sorts of stuff. But it's like if I'm putting, I mean, I've put so much money into wrestling, so much. So it's nice. It's kind of just nice to get it back. Not that it's like necessary. If
Right.
I'm,
I know where you're getting. I guess that's the reason why I was trying to be careful how I asked the question because I didn't want to give the impression that you're going to say, "Oh, I'll do it for free," because that's not what I was trying to imply here. But I was just
yeah,
curious about like how much the passion developed as a result of doing this purely by chance in a lot of ways.
yeah.
So I guess now with regards to the ups and downs, I'm really curious from your perspective because I think I may have asked it, but if I did, I don't remember what the answer was. But I've talked to some comedians, right, who, the general consensus for some people when it comes to stand up is that, you do 10 plus years, you develop, the skill and you've learned to work the crowd, et cetera. You find your routine and whatever it is, you find something that makes you realize, that you've earned the stripes. Where you, on the other hand, I think it's fair to say that you slowly starting to get a bit of a momentum, and then slowly but surely you start to figure out for yourself what works, what doesn't work, and then now you're trying to pinpoint the things that are going to work for you as you start developing it from there. But clearly the demand is there for you to the point where you mentioned that now you're in the green. Some people don't have that luxury, for one reason or another. Most people, I should say. But you're one of the very few that I've heard about now that I've talked to you about it, that I know have been able to work at it and it's paying off. Have you ever met any resentment on people out in the, how long have you been doing this here for? Oh, about a year. And you've done this and this is, yeah, and you've earning this and this is like, yeah. Any sort of like pushback as a result of that?
Um, I not anything like directly to my face, like, oh, why did you get that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
A lot of it that I do get is kind of in like the like little snide remarks that I'll catch, and I'm like, oh, like I put in a lot of work.
Right. Do you think it's entitlement though? Like, hey, I put in all this work. Why am I not getting it? Do you think it's a little bit of that?
I think some people just don't realize how much effort it takes.
Right.
Like it's a lot of luck too. I mean, it's putting in the work, right? You got to
Of
go to
course.
training. You have to train. Some people don't even want to do that much. They go to a school, they graduate, and they say, "Okay, I'm done training. Now I'm just
Yeah.
booked on shows." Does that work for some people? I'm sure it does. I'm sure it does. Um, I don't. I think, especially in any sport, any skill, you need to continue training and working, and you're gonna learn new stuff or how to do things differently and how it works for you by training regularly and not just relying on shows. Because there's a lot of things that I'm like, oh, I really want to try this and work this out, or do something by accident in training. You're like, oh, I could do this way and fix this. Like, oh my
Right.
gosh, like I would have never done that. And then add the space to actually do it again and figure it out. And then on top of that, it's like keeping up with social media, making friends with people. A lot of it's networking
Right.
and just knowing the right people. Because there's a lot of people, I'll catch myself sometimes like, man, how did that person like get there? Like, either I know someone that wrestles way better than them and like they're not at that point. So, how did this person do this? But it's like, there's so many factors that
Right.
go into it that it's like you can't get caught up in that because I for one also believe in like divine timing. So if the universe says it's not my time yet, it's not my time yet. And if I'm like, oh man, I really missed this opportunity, it just wasn't my time. That either a better opportunity or something else is going to come along when I'm ready for it. And then I'm going to crush it because I've been training. I've been in the gym every day. I've been training wrestling. I've been working on all these things to be ready for that moment when I'm supposed to have it.
So, do you believe things happen for a reason then, from what you described there?
Oh yeah.
Why is that for you? Like, why do you have the definitive like um stance on that for yourself?
I've been through many life experiences.
Right. I think we had this discussion before too, if I recall.
Yeah, I mean, there's almost nothing that you could ask me like, "Oh, have you done this before?" And I would say no to it. Like that, I've done a lot in my 31 years of living. Um, and I just believe that, like, even getting into wrestling, right? Everybody's heard the story. Guy at my gym saw me and was like, "Have you thought about wrestling?" And I was like, "I don't know what wrestling is. I
Right.
saw Glow on Netflix. Is it that?" Like, I didn't know anything about wrestling. And when he asked me that, I was in a position of, I was about to take this job offer. It was going to take me 2 hours away to work basically a 9 to 5, but it still would have been kind of fun for me. But I just was feeling this pull of like, I don't know if I should go. And there just kept being little things that were kind of telling me to stay here. And then that was kind of like not the final straw, but I was
Right.
like, okay, I need to like, I'm going to go check this out. And now it's my whole life, basically. It revolves around it. And that only happened like a year and a half ago. Um, but had I took that job, I don't think I would have ever, or maybe I would have eventually down the line.
Right.
But I'm 31 this year, and I keep getting told like, okay, well, you're getting older for wrestling because they want all these like young, either fresh out of college, whatever, because then they'll have the time to stay
Develop.
longer, right?
Yeah.
Which I get, fine, whatever. Um, but it's like I think it just happened at the right time because now I'm able to relate past experiences and stuff, be able to have the time to put into it because of all the work that I did before. And now it's kind of like, I don't know, it's been that way for everything. And I've been in seasons of my life where I've been dirt poor living in my car. And I've been in seasons of my life where I've had too much money, I didn't know what to do with it and spent it all on a bunch of stupid stuff. Um, and I just like, life goes through seasons, and I
Right.
think that it's when they're supposed to happen, and you learn those lessons along the way, and it builds for eventual whatever you're gonna whatever.
Well, I mean, you talked before about the job that you would have taken that would have taken you 2 hours away, and that was a job that you said you would have liked,
Mhm.
but and you felt like with the question that was asked, you like you should consider it, and then you felt kind of being pulled towards that, even if that never had happened, where you were presented that, about pro wrestling, and you took this job. Do you think that maybe somewhere down the line that whatever was pulling you at that moment, that you would have felt that was something else? Like it could have been, let's just say by pure coincidence, MMA. Hey, you ever thought about MMA? You look like a good, strong fighter. Look like you have some strength in you. You ever consider doing that? And whether you knew it or not, what the sport was, like, do you think that would have triggered you the same way too? Like, maybe I'll consider that. But I already taken this job. I guess I'm curious because like I had a conversation with a writer in Sean Crane about um my perspective on why things happen for why I personally don't believe. And I'm not saying that you're. I'm not saying anyone's wrong that says they believe in this or not. If things happen for a reason or not. But from my perspective, like I've said before, that it's like when how I've seen people say that is when things are going really well for them. And I'm not saying that because it's going well, then of course you're going to say it. It's not really where I'm coming from, but it's like because that's why I always ask the questions like, what happens if it's all taken away from you? Like if you've worked so hard to get to this point, and then one day the demand for Audrey Allen, the pro wrestler, is dropped. It's like, yeah, we know who you were, but there's new talent over here that's 10 times better than you, looks even better, et cetera, et cetera. And you've like busted your ass for at this point, let's say years. You worked really hard. You've earned those stripes, and then like that, it's gone, like instantly. And I always wonder, do people identify their? Not saying that they identify as a character and therefore that makes them, but more in the sense like I've worked hard for it, and they become identifying with they're identifying with their success because of the hard work they put into it. If it's taken away, you're still the same person. So would that destroy you? And like, well, this happened for a reason, and why was it taken from me? Like I'm always curious about that perspective. Like if all that would be just taken like that away from you, how would you respond to that? And do you think that, well, maybe there is a reason for why this happened, and now I got to figure out what to do next because I don't know what the next step's going to be at that point.
I love that perspective, and it still stands because I believe everything happens for a reason.
Right.
Um, I've had really terrible stuff happen to me, and they happen for a reason, whether it's character development, uh, whatever it is. So if I put 10 years into this pro wrestling thing, right?
Right.
That I just happened into anyways. Okay. I've devoted all my time towards it because one, I love it. I get to hang out with my best friend almost every day. We get to make stuff, we get to wrestle, we get to do all these things. If all of a sudden 10 years down the line, they're like, Audrey Allen, not relevant anymore. We need these other looks. Could I fit into those? No. Okay, cool. Then that door closed, another one's going to open. I think that there's.
So you truly are optimistic at the end of the day, despite.
Yeah, I think because then it's another story that I had.
That's a
Yeah, I
wonderful
was a
quality to
wrestler for
have.
10 years. It's just another thing that I mean, it's like I feel bad sometimes for my friends because they'll be like, oh yeah, I heard of this one person, they did this. I'm like, oh yeah, when I did that. And it's like every story. And I feel really bad because I have ADHD. So I'm like, I'm just trying to relate to people. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, when I had that experience doing this one thing, like they're like, oh, of course you've done that.
Right.
Of course. I'm like, I couldn't tell you how many certificates I have in all sorts of random things. I have a Guinness World Records certificate in my closet. Like, there are not many things that I haven't done, and I just do it because I love to do it and I love learning, and I just am living life.
Last time you and I spoke, I told you that I thought you'd be a really good interviewer, or someone that can do their own show and talk and just go off on several tangents, and because you said before you love learning as well. You ever thought about doing that? Like you ever considered after the fact about, maybe I should try something like that? Because I really do think that you have that quality of of a of an investigator, not like an investigator like trying to solve a mystery, but more like investigating things that you can learn from. Like I feel like you have that as well. Like, do you ever considered at all to try it at least?
I think I'm stuck on this one thing because have you ever heard of human design?
I've heard of it, but I'm not sure if I actually know what that is.
Okay, so we're gonna get really woo-woo for a second.
Okay.
Human design was introduced to me many moons ago by a friend. She's very woo-woo, and I love her. It's basically think astrology, chakras, all the things that you could think are woo-woo put together. And it's
Okay.
basically based on your time and date of birth, where you, all that stuff.
Mhm.
Here's your human design. Here's what you were meant to do in life. And my profile in human design is a 1-3, and that's an investigator.
Oh, really?
And literally, like, so I went down the rabbit hole because, again, ADHD, of human design before one of my deployments because I had 16-hour layover. And so I'm just sitting there. I've gone way down the rabbit hole. And I'm like looking at stuff and I'm sitting there crying because I'm like, I literally lived my life that way. And for so long, I got told that it was wrong and that I needed to pick a path and stick to it and just do this one thing. And I'm like, I've never related to that.
Right.
And so I think that's just like part of me, whether you believe in all that stuff or not.
Right.
I'm just like, I just think it's so cool when other people see it and I'm like, yes. And it makes me feel so much better about it.
I mean, think about it. I mean, I think because the reason why I'm really highlighting it with you, because the fact that you have so many stories to tell, and I can only imagine there's also some stuff that you talked before about, like some of the pitfalls in your life that you've had, and to me that would be like the stuff that I would be very interested in listening to about, like when you were really really low, like what got you there in the first, what was it like beforehand, what got you there, how long were you down there for, and then what did you do to get yourself back out of it.
Yeah.
And considering the fact that like you said before, you believe things happen for a reason. And I'm certainly not saying that maybe that's a way for you to change. That's not what I'm implying. But like, I'd be curious to hear your perspective, like why you think it happened for a reason, and then hear the build up to that said reason, if you will. Like, I think there's a lot that you have. You said before you've experienced, in the 31 years here. There's got to be something that you can share. I think that I would hope that people would want to listen to, and I think that and I'm hoping that you would do it one day, because with the amount of experience you've had with wrestling in that year and a half, almost 2 years at this point, and there's a lot of things you've learned. parlaying your experiences from, from going through that into, well, this is what I've learned and this is what I believe has helped me become who I am from these set experiences. But I also had another experience like that as well too, where it linked up to this, but not related, but there's a similarity behind it. Like, there's so much I think you can pull from that
Mm.
it gives you a great platform for you to literally go all over the place, but it all comes down to one thing that you're trying to, get to. And I
Yeah.
think you would be great at that, in my opinion.
I've thought about that. I just don't know how to like format things like that.
It doesn't matter. I think you should, because it's like with this show. I had a perception and it changed from what it was. I knew. I'll tell you one thing. I did know for sure because I did it with one episode, the very first one actually, when I did the intro. And I remember I was like, I'm never doing that again. And I literally cut the intro out, and it was just picking up from the conversation I had left up. And I actually learned to do that from listening to Mark Maron's podcast, because I just love how they're just like, so this joke happened when this guy said this, and it's like walking into the kitchen and you're hearing halfway the conversation, but you know what it's about, but you don't know the very beginnings of it. But it doesn't matter because you're halfway there and it's already interesting that caught your attention. Like that's
Yeah.
how I had pictured it. And so whatever format you have that you think you need to do, I don't think that really matters, because I think you'll figure it out as you do it along the way. And then if you love it enough, then you'll stick with it. If you don't, then easiest you have that story to tell.
Right, literally.
Literally, yeah.
That's how, yeah, me and my tag partner, Amanda, we were just talking about that the other day because we did a couple of really long road trips this past couple weeks.
Right.
And we were like, man, we should just mount a camera on the dashboard to
That would
record
be
a conversation.
awesome. That's an entire episode right there in itself. I mean, if you
Mm-hmm.
think about that, the road trips you guys are taking, the amount of stories you can tell, and if you're talking, the camera just zooms in on you and on her, etc. I think that would be such a unique thing that you guys could do, considering your backgrounds. There's a lot you can do with that. You can have a proper intro with the road trip scenery itself, and infuse. I think there's so much you could do. There's a lot of ideas I'm thinking about what you guys could pull off there. So yeah, I
Yeah.
think you should definitely do that.
Yeah, it's just the doing it part. Like it's like, okay, add that on to the 70 things I'm also currently doing.
Right.
So it's like I need to do it. I have a GoPro that I could do that with easily.
Well, the beautiful thing about that too is like if you guys were to do it and don't post it up for, I don't know, a year, let's just an example, it's a timeless period of your life where you can share these stories over and over again, and maybe you don't have to repeat them again, but you have it,
Yeah.
and it can be listened to and talked about 10 years from now, and it still maybe have the same impact. So I think that's what I'm trying to get, because I think you guys have that quality. Well, in this case, you and Amanda will have that quality to pull that off, that it would be very fitting to you to do that. So I hope you
Yeah.
guys do actually pull it off, because that would be something I'll be very interested in checking out to see how you guys start from there and then figure out what works for you guys at the end of the day to make it yours, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. I've also like I started for a little bit on my social media. One of my old roommates, he was like, man, I love when you tell stories. He's like, you gotta
Yeah.
start like recording them and posting them. And I was like, man, you're right. I should do that. And I did it like twice and people loved it. I just like, I don't know. It's the talking part
Yeah.
that is like, I I obviously can talk. I talk a lot sometimes too much. Um, but it's like I just sometimes I think it's just sometimes I feel like the imposter syndrome shows up where it's like, who cares what I have to say?
Yeah, who gives a shit about
You know
that?
what I
I
mean?
I know
Like,
what you're saying, but at the end of the day, it's it's really about you and whoever is going along with the ride there, and that's all you
yeah,
should think about. That's all. It's
yeah.
Yeah, because I
And then
mean,
it's like the setting up of I gotta set the camera up. I gotta do the thing. The amount of times that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna document my whole gear making process because I'm learning how to do this from
right.
step one, day one. I'm like, that would be really cool to have. I took maybe 2 videos of me unboxing the sewing machine, and that was the end of that. I'm like,
You
great.
should. Do you have something to do it with you to record the whole thing?
No, not really. I'm
Mm.
trying to convince my tag partner to move with me and be roommates so that we can literally go to the gym, film content, do promos, do all the things that we need to do and train. Will we get sick of each other? Maybe, who knows? But it would be
That's
really
also
cool
part of
to
the story
have
you could
that
tell
for
too.
each other. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I, well, I mean, I know you have a lot on your plate, but I really do hope that you really make that happen because
Yeah.
hearing you share that stuff, like it gets me excited to see what you guys can pull off.
Yeah.
Um, and then the wrestling is just more or less the icing on the cake that you guys can just. I mean, it has to be the focus, obviously, as you already know, but it would be something that I think would be interesting to tell for those road stories, and then the stories aren't even wrestling related at the end of the day.
No.
I mean, I can think. I just I would be so fascinated to hear what you guys have to share with each other, in this case with the audience about that. Um, have you ever thought about like doing interviews with other people as well too, like going up to people and other pro wrestlers in this case, some of your good people you're really good friends with, and just say, hey, let's have a sit down and just and converse, and
Yeah.
you might have to record it. You ever think about doing something like that too?
Um, no, I really liked uh Maddie Rankowski. Now she's Ren Sinclair. She's officially in WWE, which is dope.
Right,
But when she was still just with the NWA, she would do these like backstage interview kind of things with her tiny mic. And I really loved, they were mostly sarcastic, and her just getting her character over.
right.
I really loved the idea that she was going up to people at shows and just like having a little tiny conversation, and then that was it, and posting it. So I have thought about that in like, especially like short formats, because I'm one of those people that's like, I just don't want to bug people, right? Like, especially if I'm in like a wrestling situation, right? I'm in a locker room, I'm doing whatever. I hardly ever will go up to anyone and ask questions or like try to talk to them because they got 70 million things on their plate. They're trying to, think about who they're wrestling with, what they're doing, all this other stuff going on. Have they eaten? Have they, whatever. Like,
Mhm.
so I'm like, I don't know. I have never been that person to like initiate a lot of stuff. However, I think in the past 6 months to a year, I've gotten more like outgoing as far as that goes, and being able to walk up to strangers and or people that I know and like just start talking to them and asking them questions and doing things. So I think that would be a good next step to try. And
I
even
think
if
it
it's
would
like,
too.
hey, I
Yeah.
got one question to ask you, can we film this? And then go from there.
You think that you'll actually pull it off in the near future, or that's just something you're gonna work up to?
I think it might be something I have to work up to, or like start with people I know really well,
Right.
right? Like I see them at shows every once in a while, and I can be like, hey, I have this idea. Well, let me see how that goes first.
Do you ever think of just not telling them I have some ideas? Just I'm not gonna say surprise them and record them. I'm more like in a sense like not even tell them what it is. Just say, hey, almost like giving them a like giving a little misdirection, like, hey, we're gonna be doing this, but I want to record. Are you okay with that record? Because I want to try something here. Like, yeah, sure, no problem. And then boom, hit them with something like they did not expect, where they thought it was
Yeah,
gonna be one thing and it turned out to be something else. Like something to get like a genuine response on the spot,
yeah,
where it turns into be like, hey, that was actually pretty cool. I mean, do you see where I'm coming with that? You think I could
yeah.
try something like that?
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I was seeing in my head of like doing it with like closer friends
Right,
first,
right, of course.
seeing how it goes, and then like be able to build the confidence with it and then go from there.
Interesting.
Because I even
Y-
thought about like just asking people in the locker room what their favorite Disney movie is, or like stuff like that, just like for my own content of like
Right.
being the Disney like annual pass holder kind of thing. Um, just because I thought it would be kind of funny. And after seeing Ren's videos, I was like, man, that could be something that like even if I just started there with something super simple, super easy,
Right.
not deep at all,
Right.
but like somewhere to start and then build.
I think you have something there you can go with here. I think if you, I hope you do it real soon. I really do.
I will think about I have a couple of shows coming up, obviously, this coming weekend. Let me see what show I have this weekend. I feel like this is, let's see. We are in May.
Right.
Coming up quick. Oh my gosh.
So
I
today's the
think I could
21st.
try like something on this Saturday or Sunday even.
I think you should do it. I think you should just roll with it and just and make it, make it happen.
Just
And if
do
it
it.
doesn't turn out well, then you have the following day to do it. So I mean, you have plenty of opportunities. I think. I think there's a lot you can do with that. I actually wanted to because I commented on your social media post with regards to your upcoming match at the time with Amanda, where you had
Mhm.
the whole. So I there's one thing I remember that actually made me laugh pretty out loud too was regards to I think you had said something to the effect of like I've wrestled Amanda before and so I can't remember how you said something about like I don't like her, but this time I really don't like her, something like that. But the reason why I thought that was so good was because there's a certain like fourth wall breaking that you just did there where like everyone who follows that your story or follows your accounts and see you wrestle, they've seen you wrestle so many times, there's videos of it all over the place. So you saying that and saying but this time I mean it, like I love that angle so much. And then of course at the end when you're like oh there she is and you run off, like that to me shows me that you have really good timing. So that's why I thought you would be so good at what you're doing now. So if you think about, I mean, I don't know if you look back at the video again, but if you have, I think you should and look at that particular moment there where you're just like, but this time I mean it. I don't know why, but something about that really made me realize that you have great timing. And if you can use that effectively with the various other things you're going to do, I mean, I
Yeah,
think the world's, you have the world at the palm of your hands at that point. Like, I think you're that good from what I saw there.
that's funny. Yeah, I was at Disney
Right.
and I was there with my friend Sierra. She's basically my Disney buddy. We both have annual passes. We go all the time.
Right.
Anytime one of us goes, we're like, "Hey, what you doing on these days?" So I looked at her. I'm like, "She's not a pro wrestling fan. She's not at all. She's an Audrey Allen fan because she loves me." Um, but I was like, "Hey, I really need to film some promos. Do you mind recording me as I scream at you?" And she was like, "Absolutely." So I had literally recorded 4 or 5 promos while we were there over the span of like 2 days.
Right.
Um, most of them were single take, just like, okay, what's the date of this? Who am I wrestling? All right, let's do this. Like in character, we're at Disney. Like, come on. And I love that promo that I did for Amanda. So I think
Yeah,
it's
so did
funny that
I.
you brought it up at all because I'm like, man, I just felt so like one in my character, two, it's Amanda. Like we literally last weekend was our 20th match that we've had together.
Interesting.
It feels like 1,000. Um, but if you think about it, like I've only had almost 30 matches this year. And last year, I think I was at like somewhere in the 30s. Like this year, I'm almost at the point where I did the entire last year worth of matches. So
Is it
like if
because
you
of
think
the
about,
demand for you so high that you were able to get so much more up to this point rather than last year? Is that the reason why?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I have a spreadsheet where I keep all the numbers because I just love
That's so
numbers.
funny.
I love numbers. So yeah, I'm at almost, I don't know where I'm at right now, but if you think about like, I mean, that's like 60 something matches maybe,
Mhm.
and she's been 20 of them.
Okay. So that's like pretty much a quarter of it at that point.
That's a lot.
That's almost half of it, I should say. That's almost
Right?
half your match. Wow.
So it's like the dynamic between us is just great.
Right.
Uh, she's also my best friend. So getting to have like these feuds with her and stuff, like, should I even be saying that? Probably not, but whatever. I love her to pieces. She's my best friend. She's also now my tag partner.
Mhm.
And we're debuting next month officially, which is like so exciting.
You guys have a
Um,
name for your duo?
we are the Hot Mess Express.
I love it.
Yep.
Did you think of that one?
Yeah,
Oh, interesting.
it's us together is just chaos all the time. And we're just all over the place, the both of us. And that's why when we go on these car rides and stuff, we're like, man, we should really set up a little dash cam to like record us because this is wild. But we're just the same. We are basically the same person, and we just feed off of each other. And so it's just never ending.
That's so funny. So when you so when I'm hearing you talk about this, it's obviously it's very obvious you love it. But you actually seem like you genuinely seem really happy, not just because of pro wrestling or what it brought. I mean, yeah, what it brought for you, but like it seems like there was a lot more that you've gotten from this that you probably anticipated that made you look at things a little more differently. I'm assuming for the better, of course. Obviously, not without its hardships, but there's a lot that you're getting from this here for the amount of time you invested, and not only is it paying off for you monetarily, but it's like you're gaining a lot more out of, I guess, out of life, if you will. Um, so is that kind of a fair assessment to make that you seem like really genuinely happy despite the chaos with the scheduling, but it seems like it's worth it for you.
Oh yeah. When I got approached about pro wrestling and I was thinking about this other job and I was thinking about all this other stuff, right? The biggest thing for me was that I had just lost a community that I was part of. Like I was in the military.
Right.
I got out, but I went contracting. So I was still in and around the military, right? Making a lot more money, which was great. But I still had my community. Like I was still being deployed for a living. Like that really hadn't changed anything. Once I retired from that, all of a sudden I didn't have anybody anymore. And I moved here to North Carolina, not knowing anyone out here. And so I was kind of like lost. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't have a community of people anymore. Like, what? Like, I'm very lost, right? So when pro wrestling happened and I met these people, including Amanda, she was one of the first people I met at training. It was like, oh, it's a bunch of weirdos like me that get together, put on sparkly underwear, and abuse their bodies. This is great. Like, so that was, for me, that's all I wanted out of it at the beginning. It was like, I get to show up multiple times a week, hang out with these people, and be active and do something. And now that's turned into, she's my best friend now. We hang out all the time. We get to wrestle together and travel together. That's great. And it's like now I have this community of people and it's ever growing because it's like the more I go places, the more people I meet, the more that community just expands for me. And it's brought so much more of my passion into like creating and doing all this other stuff because I'd been feeling really stuck because I was like, I'm just lost. I'm a creative person. But when you're in that headspace of like, I don't have anybody, and now what am I doing with my life? You don't really like sit into that. And so now I've gotten this like really supportive group of people surrounding me that is like, I can be myself, which is just a chaotic weirdo. And everybody is like your cheerleader all the time. And so that's what I like take out of it for the most part. Like I've also extremely come out of my shell. I was an extreme introvert. I would have never in my life done anything like this a year and a half ago. Never.
It's crazy how much has changed for you in that span of time.
Yeah. I'm like, you want me to get up in front of a crowd and yell at people? Ain't no way. Just the getting in front of a crowd part was like, oh, like if you see clips, I should put a throwback clip on my page at some point because you can see the like terror in my face.
Is that on your YouTube channel, by the way? Your first match?
I think it is. I put a lot of them unlisted, just because I keep getting the like, you shouldn't be posting full matches, but like, I think I'm going to keep them for myself, obviously.
Right.
But I definitely think I need to post,
Why? So why are they advising you not to put full matches on your channel? Is it because it's someone else's promotion, or is it just because it's the common practice?
um, okay, so I keep getting back and forth on this. The last thing that I heard, which I kind of was like, man, I guess that's kind of true, is that if somebody can see every match you've ever done, why are they going to pay a ticket to come see you?
Well, it's the same thing with like watching a Raw show and SmackDown or whatever pay-per-view show. I
Right.
mean, you get to buy it and own the match and pay for the rematch. You know, it's just like that
Right.
concept doesn't make any sense to me at all.
Right.
So,
But it's a
what's
promotion
the
that now I
argument?
can't post a lot of their stuff.
Oh, okay,
Some of their stuff is like some of my favorite matches. So I'm like, well, but
okay.
I'm so yeah, I keep going back and forth on them. Like I see what they're saying, kind of, and then it's like, especially if you do the same, like if your comeback is one thing that you just do this sequence every single time, and people can literally see it, like, oh, I watched this match and this match and this match, and it's all the same. Then it's kind of like, meh.
But
Which
it's
is
like it's like a it's I understand the perspective, but it's like a band playing the same song over and over and over again. So when you see it live and hope that it's, you know, let's hope the band does a really good job in playing the song well, but you're seeing it live, like, I love the song, and I'm seeing them play it in front of me, even though they played the song 15 times, 15 dates ago, whatever it was. That kind of just that it's a very flawed argument in my opinion. I
right.
I get where they're coming from, but I found there's no grounds behind it when it comes to that. I guess for the sake of like not pissing people off,
Yeah,
I don't know. I have my
exactly.
opinions on that because this is not the first time I've heard this before. I believe you're not the first person I had this conversation with. Um, it makes no sense at all
No.
because at the end of the day, when if you think about it, what happens if the promotion falls apart and all of a sudden their content is gone and like, well, I had the match, like, oh yeah, well, we had to storage it away because of this and that. So, well, I did ask for a while back. You said, you're like, just none of that makes any sense for me because these, as you already know, any promotions can do really well and then boom, they're gone within minutes. So I don't know. I guess my advice is fuck them, just take what you can and move on. So that's just how I look at
Yeah.
it. But
Well, that's why like I still post them online, and sometimes I'll keep them up for like a month or something, and then just post them because it's
I
like
took it
people
off,
don't
guys. No, I'm joking.
understand. Like I don't know. I think it's silly too. So like
Yeah,
it's kind of one of those like, well, I at least want them to be archived for myself
right.
so I can have them and still
Well,
send them
especially in the indie scene because it's
something.
very hard to come across these days. Well, not only these days, but if you're a person that just relies on someone else to keep the recordings for you, it can be a very it could be a detriment from what I've seen so far.
Oh yeah, yeah,
So there's a question I want to ask you, and I hope it's a fair question to ask, but because I want to get how I want to get an understanding how you handle this for yourself because you have a very busy schedule. You work full time too, right?
Not anymore. I just quit my job.
Okay,
No.
so now this is full time for you now, right? Well, congratulations on that too. So the amount of time you invest with this and are able to now sustain yourself as a result of that, um, how how has it been for you? And I'm not asking you to give me like personal details, but I'm just curious about balancing out your private life with the amount of stuff that you do going on the road and then um dedicating time for your merchandise and social media and the various other things you do because that can be a lot of that's very time consuming. And when I've done it, it's like 15 minutes to me. It would be like thinking of a paragraph to say for what I'm going to post. And then I got another 30 minutes on top of that with all the things I got to do with it. So it's like, it's, I hate to say it, but it's a pain in the ass sometimes. But since you're dedicating all that time to that, um, have you ever thought about like, as you start to see the progression with your career, the effects it has on your private life and whether it be good or bad, how have you figured out to balance it out to not take too much time away from it? Or maybe, you know what, this is sacrifice I'm willing to make. So therefore it's all in and nothing else. Like I'm curious to see what your perspective on that is for yourself.
Um, so to put it like slightly in more perspective, my job before, I was deploying for a living. So I was deploying 6 months on, 3 months off. That for having a personal life sucks. um, you're gone for 6 months in another country and then you're home. And for me, that meant backpacking other countries because I'm like, I ain't got nothing to come back to. So I'm just going to do whatever I want and enjoy my life. Um, so like road trips here, ain't nothing for me. I'm gone for a day or two. It's whatever.
Right.
I'm wrestling in Utah in 2 or 3 weeks.
You're driving or
And
you're flying there?
I'm flying. I'm
Okay.
flying.
I was like, if you're driving, that's a hell of a trip.
Right. But I'm like, I'm gone for 3 days. Ain't nothing. The only thing that really affects me is I have a dog at home.
Mm,
And so like he's my biggest struggle to work with schedule wise, because it's like, well, now I gotta pay someone to either come walk him at the house or pay to stick him at somebody's house for the night. And then they can watch him and make sure he's all good. But I'm just one of those, like, if I'm gonna do something, I'm all in on it. So I just don't really think about, like, I think everybody needs to remember that they're number one in their own lives.
right.
And I'm doing what I enjoy doing. Um, Especially as far as like other people coming into my life, whether it be friends, relationships, whatever. Um, I come first. Whether I love those people or not, I love Amanda to pieces. She's my best friend. But if I need to do something for me, I'm going to do something for me. I'm going to
Right.
ask her what her opinions are, and I'm going to, like, we can bounce stuff back and forth, but ultimately, I'm going to do what's best for me, right? So I think that rubs people wrong a lot of times. Um, but I'm used to the deployment mindset of, like, pretty much everything is temporary, and that's
Doesn't
kind
it
of
get
just how.
tiring though? Does it get a little tiring for you to kind of with that lifestyle? Because I guess because I've never had that experience at all. So I hope you don't mind me going deeper with that. But when you have that experience with, like, because you talked before about you've been you've been poor, lived in a car, and then you've been able to have jobs where you've got more than enough money to share. But even with all of that, you're still bouncing back and forth from one place to another. And then, and I'm not saying that you never had a consistency. I'm not saying that as far as like a balance stuff. I'm not saying that, but it almost sounds like to me that you've you stayed one place, enjoyed your time. I'm done because I have to go now. See you later, and then that's it. Next place. So if you think, I guess, like if I have known you for years and I met you somewhere a while ago, as man, Audrey's a great person, love her to death, but I haven't seen her in 9 years, and then one day I come across you, and I say, hey, how have you been? I saw that you're doing this and that. Is there something about that length of time that you've been away from someone that you've met so long ago? And let's say you did have a great relationship with them, friendship wise, and then you say, yeah, it's been a long time. Like, is there a sense of awkwardness that would come with that? Or is it like, hey, you want to grab a beer? Or, like, I'm curious about, like, where your mindset is when it comes to stuff like that. If you meet somebody down the line that you have not seen in a long time, and all of a sudden you're picking up the pieces that maybe you have some unsaid stuff that were never picked up again because you said I was going to call you back, but I never did, or whatever. You understand where I'm coming from with that?
Um, no, so I think it works to my advantage, right? Because for me, a lot of my like ADHD is time blindness.
Okay.
So these long amounts of time that I go without like seeing certain people or doing things, it doesn't feel as long as it has been for me. Um,
Okay.
I have a lot of friends. So I'm originally from California,
Right.
so complete opposite coast, right?
Right. Right.
A lot of my friends still live there. And I'm like, I talk to them, I don't know, some of them once a month, some of them once a year. We'll send Merry Christmas back and forth, and that's about it. Or like say hi on each other's birthdays. Um, which, like, thank God for Google Calendar, or else I forget all of them.
Right.
Uh, but it's like, oh, hey, yeah, I haven't seen you in a little bit, and they'll be like, yeah, it's been 9 years. I'm like, oh, really? It's been that long already? Like, I couldn't tell you the last time I physically saw my parents in person.
Really? Has it
It
been that
does
long?
not feel like that long. So for me, if I go back to California or for some reason they come out here to finally visit me, it's just like, okay, cool, here we are, like pick up right
Mm.
where we left off kind of thing. Um, it
And
also
there,
kind of like
there has been
works.
no like sort of resentment at all from like, from anybody. I haven't seen you in years. Why don't you come visit and talk to us? And why are you so busy doing this? Like, what about us? Any of that at all?
No, I feel
Okay.
like people that invest themselves into being my friends, they know that I'm just all over the place. Usually those phone calls start with, "Hey, what country are you in?"
It's
And I'm like, "Oh, I'm actually back in the US now." And they're like, "Okay, cool. So, how you been? Here's the updates." Like, especially
interesting.
now I got friends with kids, right? So now I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like they're growing." And I'm like, "Okay, that kind of puts a little bit more perspective on how long it's been since I've seen them."
Mm,
Um, but yeah, any of my like real, actual, true friends, they know that I care so much about them and that I love them. And I'll reach out when I like,
when you
if I think
can.
about them and I'll like, I really need to message them. And that'll probably happen a few times before I actually message them. Um, I'll be like, "Hey, I'm just checking in." And they'll be like, "Hey."
Interesting.
So, and I feel like the people that get butthurt about it just kind of leave anyways. So, yeah, I don't, anybody that I actually really care about and actually cares about me, they kind of just know that that's part of
So there's a mutual understanding that comes with
it.
it. Then is basically the bottom line. Oh, that makes sense. I can see that. But you've never. I guess the my next question is that you ever felt lonely in the process because of the constant back and forth and moving around and going place to place?
Mm, every once in a while. When I had my last job, I never felt lonely. I literally had friends in multiple countries at a time. So almost anywhere I was at, I could either text them or be at their house in a matter of minutes. Um, it was once I got out of that and I had my first like, "Oh, I'm in North Carolina now," that I was kind of like, I don't have anybody. And now that support network that I had is kind of lacking. But I do have that handful of friends that if I call them up at any time, they'll generally answer. And if they have time, obviously.
Right.
And it's like, "Hey, I'm kind of feeling down, a little lonely," and we'll chat for a little bit. And it's like it's a little bit better after that.
So for yourself though, because of the more or less the nomadic lifestyle you have, do you think you'll ever come to the point where you're just going to settle down and just stay one place and be like, this is home from now on? Do you think you ever get to that point?
I thought that was here. So Um, yeah, I retired from my job, bought my
Right.
current place, which I love, and I've spent time and money renovating it and making it exactly how I want it. And now I'm like, I think I'm gonna move.
Really?
I also adopted my dog because I'm like, cool, it's just gonna be me and this puppy, and we're gonna make art all day, and that's gonna be it. And then pro wrestling found me. So yeah, I don't know if that's ever going to happen for me because every time I think that I'm like, yeah, this is it. I'm settling down. Something else will get thrown my way, and I'm like, that sounds pretty cool. I'm gonna go chase that now.
But you've never felt tired at all of like having to, oh, I gotta go somewhere else now. Yeah, I can't sit still. You've never felt like any sort of like, this is too much right now. Nothing like that at all?
I love it.
Interesting. That's so
I
fascinating.
love it. I love traveling.
Right.
I love what travel brings me, which is new experiences, new
Right.
people. Um, I mean, because of all the places that I've gone, the people that I've met, like I wouldn't trade any of it for the world.
Right.
And like I've had some really shitty situations that I've been in. But it's like character development. Like it's just part of it. It just becomes another story to tell. And I end up kind of I scare family members of quite often with some of the like stupid decisions I make as far as traveling and especially traveling by myself and doing stuff like I spent 3 months backpacking South America
Right.
and I was hitchhiking in South America and taking buses and like sleeping in hostels. Like my parents hated that. But it's like I met some of the coolest people that way
Right.
and I had the most like the coolest experiences. I saw stuff that I would have never seen had I not met those people or done those things. And it's like,
What's one experience that like really changed your life? And I'm talking about change your life, not for like it made you look at yourself differently, but like change your life in a way that gave you perspective on how I guess that kind of led you to be more optimistic, if that makes any sense.
uh, I feel like I've just kind of always been that way. Um, it
Well,
started.
I guess what I'm trying to say is like where it gave you a clarity. So like for you said, you mentioned before you've always been optimistic,
Mm,
but it seemed like it was a natural thing for you. But I guess because since you mentioned before that you believe things happen for a reason, like this optimism I have now it makes sense.
yeah. I think hindsight's 2020, as cheesy as that is. When I was going, like, I had a really like tumultuous childhood, as most of us do,
Mhm.
it seems. But when I was exiting high school and going into college, I really wanted to go to art school. I wanted to go to art school. I wanted to do that. End of story. My parents were like, no. So I ended up going to a liberal arts college. And I was like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. I tried the business thing. That was not it for me.
Yeah.
I was like, well, maybe, kinesiology, sports medicine, like something like that. Cause I played a lot of sports growing up. I'm like,
Like a lot of standard career choices, basically.
yeah, I'm like,
Mm.
I could go that route, whatever. It was not for me. And there just so happened to be a Navy recruiter down the street that I could walk to. And I was like, hey, don't really know what I'm doing with my life. I had a scholarship to college, but not a full ride. So my parents were still paying for my college. And I was like, well, this is dumb to pay for something that I don't even know what I'm doing.
Right.
And they're both very much like, you need to find that one thing and follow it. And I was like, I just don't know what that is for me now. And I ended up joining the Navy because of it. And joined the Navy, started working on airplanes. That was cool. Ended up flying drones my last year in because they're like, hey, want to go to Afghanistan and learn a new skill? I'm like, yeah. Um, and so, like, I
So-
hated my parents for so long for not letting me go to art school, right?
I see.
Looking back on it, I would have never had any of those experiences, probably. We'll never know. But had
Right.
I gone to an art school, I would have gone through any of that. You know what I
Interesting.
mean? Like,
Yeah,
and there
yeah.
was good times and bad times within that. I mean, there was really highs and really lows during that time. But it's like, had I gone to art school, if my parents were actually supportive at the time, I wouldn't have done I mean, it would have been a completely different trajectory.
Are your parents supportive of you now, like seeing how how far you've come with the experiences and choices you've made for yourself, and then the introduction of pro wrestling? I'm sure they probably had their thoughts on it too, like what the hell are you doing? And then they're seeing, I'm hoping they're seeing that, hey, there's something. I quit my job. What are you gonna do? I'm pro wrestling now. Like really? You know what I'm saying? Like, are they seeing a lot more optimism in as far as like the path that you're taking on here?
Sort of. My dad more than my mom, because my dad, like, he quit going to school. He owned his own auto shop. Like, it was this whole thing, and he was really successful at it. So he's kind of one of those, like, yeah, you don't really need a degree. You don't really need to do all this other stuff. Like, you can make money other ways.
Right.
My mother is very, you go to college, you get the house and the white picket fence, and
Traditional.
it's very traditional, like American dream, right?
Yeah.
So even when I was making six figures a year, she'd be like, so when are you going to go back to college? Like, why would I do that?
Right.
So it's kind of, especially when I was like, hey, I just started pro wrestling. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
And my dad's kind of more like, makes sense for you. Yeah. Okay. Sure. Like, what? And my mom was like, I'm terrified because my daughter's going to die or whatever.
Right.
So it's kind of like, I think they both sort of at least accepted that I do my own thing. And they're not going to stop that. uh, I know they worry about me as parents do.
Right.
But I try to keep myself as safe as possible. And I keep them updated and
Do
they know
you
that I'm happy at least.
do you care about being an example for somebody, or whether it be kids that you see at the show? Like, I mean, does that matter to you personally about being a good example, or do you just think about, like you said before, I got to look out for me, what's best for me? And I'm assuming that, if what I do happens to inspire somebody, makes me happy, but that's not why I did it. You see where I'm coming from with that?
Um, I love like one of the biggest things for me that I love about pro wrestling, especially at shows,
Mhm.
is the little girls that are there that get to see something that's not really traditional and is more of like a male dominated industry
True.
with like
Yeah.
super badass women in it. And they get to see it firsthand and they get to come up to me and be like, oh my gosh, that was so cool. And they get to see, like, hey, I could do that. And
Mhm.
like, I think that that's kind of been just how my life has gone, anyways. I've been in male dominated industries for my whole life. Um, I've always been the 1%. And like, so now pro wrestling is like, oh, another male dominated industry. Okay, cool. I'm going to be that one that proves that like women can do this too, which means that now these little girls, their parents that are at these shows can see like, oh, hey, like that's a thing that can, like, there's more than just here's those steps that you got to be for the rest of your life. And I love seeing that through them where it's like, they just get so excited like, oh my gosh, a girl is doing this, and like, I love this thing, I love wrestling, and now I get to see you doing this, and like, oh my gosh. So I do, I mean, I really love that. I love that me doing just me causes that for other people, and I love that.
What about for, because you really do come off as a really nice, genuine. Even with my first time meeting you, you were very pleasant to talk to as well, especially with the amount of people that were coming up to your table, and we had to step away a few times so you can, deal with them. But with moments, not necessarily days, but just moments where you're probably not your best, as far as like really pissed off mood and whatever else. Um, how is it is it easier for you to get over whatever you're dealing with at that moment that kind of really pissed you off or annoyed you, whatever the case may be, that you're able to recalibrate and then get back into more or less the optimism, the good attitude, if you will? Because the reason I'm asking is because, with the amount of people that came up to you, you were very pleasant with all of them. Some were a little more aggressive than others, but you handled yourself very well. And sometimes there was one weird, I'm sure you may remember, like some weird shit would happen, and I'm like, how people deal with that, especially someone in your position. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm judging. I'm not, but like, I don't think I would do it as well as you have done. I'll put it that way. Not that I'll be a jerk about it, but I'm just saying I don't think I would have handled it as well. And but I always wonder if you. I think I may have asked you this too. So if I did, and I don't remember the answer, and I forgive if I'm asking again, but I wonder about the times when you show up to a show and you're just in a very shitty mood for whatever that reason may be, and you've got to go out there, put on a show, and you got to talk to the fans afterwards. You got to sell merchandise, but you don't want to show that you have a shitty attitude because you don't want to, you're not passing on to them what you're going through. And I'm not saying you're putting on a face. I'm not saying you've ever done that, but I'm wondering if one, if that has happened, where I'm just gonna pretend and put on this face, or you come to the point where like, I'm not going to be a jerk. I'm having a shitty day, but it's not their fault. So be nice to them. Like, I'm wondering how you handle and conduct yourself under those circumstances for you.
So I do believe in like the fake it till you make it, right? So if I'm feeling pissed off or sad or whatever, it's usually more sad than anything. Because if I'm pissed off, it's usually because I'm like, the underlying factor is that I'm sad. And usually that's the case, right? But I've found that like if you look at yourself in the mirror and you smile or laugh at yourself, you're causing your brain to like see like, oh, you're happy now, right? And
Hmm.
it kind of lets you get in a
Like, you're
different
tricking yourself,
mindset.
basically.
Yes.
You think that
Um,
really does work when you just do that? Like, hey, look at your funny face, and boom, like that, it
yeah.
works.
If you
Really
start even fake laughing, like especially
interesting.
if
I've
you're
never
looking
seen
at
it that
yourself.
way.
start fake laughing at yourself.
Really?
Like, ha 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 ha. And you're like, you look fucking silly, right? Like,
But even if
and
you're in a
people start
really
really
shitty
laughing.
mood, and if you're in a
Yes,
shitty, like if like
yes,
someone has ruined your day,
yes.
you can go in the mirror and tell yourself
Laugh.
something and make yourself laugh, fake laugh, and it works for you.
Yes.
That's
Nine
so
times out of
I've never heard of that before. It's interesting.
I swear I learned it from somebody like a long, long time ago. They're like, just start fake laughing at yourself in a mirror. You have to see it. Um, but you're watching you laugh. Like you're watching yourself be like happy, right? Or like at least entertained by something, and it's you. But yeah, that works for me a lot.
Yeah.
Even if it's just to like be able to put a face on
Right.
to like do something. And it's usually my first couple interactions with people at especially wrestling shows, they're gonna make me a little bit, get me kind of out of that mood anyways for the most part. Because I usually get to meet really cool people.
What happens if it's a shitty person? Like, hey, I want your autograph, and you put on that fake laugh, and it got you in a good mood, and all of a sudden you're like, this fucking asshole. He just pulled me right
uh,
back in the shitty mood.
Usually in that circumstance, especially, it works really well if I'm a heel because I'll be like, why should I do that for you?
That's so fucking funny.
Or okay, that'll be $20. And either they're going to give me the $20, which is going
That's
to
so
make me
funny. I
happy,
never thought of that.
or they're going to, I'll be like, give me 3 reasons why I should take a picture with you.
Oh, it's so fucking funny.
And then either they're going to be speechless and walk away,
That's
or
so
they're going to give
funny.
me something which is probably going to make me laugh anyways. But
Uh,
I also like, I I have customer service voice. Okay.
mhm.
Uh, I worked at Disney. Like I actually worked at Disneyland for 2 years
In Florida or in California?
in California.
Okay.
Um, a
That must have been a
smile
really
is
tough
part of
job
your
too, by the
costume.
way.
So you have to take people screaming at you about how much they paid to get into this park with their whole family, just like
Mhm.
everybody else did. And you know, the next show starts in 15 minutes, but they want you to let them into this one right now, and we're not going to do that. So it's literally me smiling, them yelling at me, and then being like, "Have a magical day,"
Jesus Christ.
as they walk away, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
So when you're in a bad mood, and now it's like you have to put the smile on, it's part of your costume, and you're wearing this silly outfit, you're having to smile, you're already pissed off, you're already sad, you're already whatever. It's like the whole thing is kind of hilarious. Like if you actually think about it, it's like, why the hell am I doing this?
But how do you deal with like, because you put on, I guess because I'm so, I've done customer service work before, and it's not my favorite field by any means. And I
Yeah,
respect a lot of people who work in it too, because this is a very tough job. I think more than people may realize.
yeah,
But it's just that, when I hear you say that, the reason I mean it's funny, but I'm shocked to hear you say it because I never thought of it something that would work for somebody. Where like look in the mirror, laugh at yourself, and then that will put you at ease. And then you're able to carry that momentum until someone ruins it, whatever.
right.
And you find a way to kind of like make it work in your favor. But when you're working at Disneyland, in this case here, and you're you're basically taught and forced to put on the face because we have an image to keep and et cetera, even though we're charging them up the ass and they're pissed off, sometimes maybe rightfully so, depending on the situation. But the fact of the matter is that you put up this face, this persona, and then once you're off the clock, does it come out like Jesus Christ, what a fucking piece of shit this guy was? Like, does that come out, or some more like, you know what? I'm gonna let it roll off my back. Like, I'm wondering like how you've developed for yourself to overcome that too, where it doesn't turn into depression, where like you're suppressing things, if you will.
Yeah. Um, it's a little bit of both. Sometimes just getting through it, it's like, okay, well, I feel a little bit better now. Because usually sprinkled into these different people that I meet, conversations, whatever, there's usually at least something positive to kind of like either hold on to
Mm.
and like, okay, this was worth it because I had this, whatever instance with this person. Um, there's definitely been times where I get back there and I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Like, or like, man, that guy was creepy, like just there, because there's some weird people that you have to deal with, and it's like, especially being a character, right? Like happy, positive, doing the thing, but you get those really weird people that you're like, okay, like now I'm uncomfortable. um, and a lot of it's just having that support system of like, if I get back there, generally someone saw it and they're like, bro, what the heck was that? And you can kind of like laugh about it because it's like, yeah, dude, that was weird. And they'll be like, yeah, I saw this and this. And then now it's turned that into an interaction with someone else that is positive. And it's like talking about how weird or creepy or whatever it was, like that kind of makes it better. If I'm starting out in a shit mood before I get out there and do the thing, and then there's weird people, um, it's a little bit harder, but it's like I'll just call a friend after, or like, hey, I need to just like sit down and like debrief some stuff with you. Like I need to like shed
Vent
some of
out.
this
Yeah.
like
Yeah, I
just
can see
crappy
that.
stuff off. Cause it's like, and I obviously know which friends I can do that with and I can't do that with. Or I'll be like, hey, do you have the mental capacity for me to just unload on you right now? And they'll be like, yes, I do actually, because I need to unload on you for a second afterwards. I'm like, all right, cool. Um, but I think a lot of it's just like being able to regulate your own emotions, right? Which like a lot of people struggle with. I've been in and out of therapy since before I could remember. Uh, and I feel like I've gone through a lot of things where it's like either coping mechanisms with like how I'm feeling versus like how I'm responding to the world around me. To where I can bring like just kind of shed those and bring myself back up. That makes sense.
It does. Do you think you're a vindictive person? But or if you were, I mean, do you think there was the vindictive you may have had, or probably still have, or don't have at all, or never had? But I'm just curious, like, do you consider yourself being a vindictive person where, because of the hardships you've gone through, and I'm sure there's a lot of people you've come across that you said you made friends with, but I'm sure there's a lot of people you come across you're like, fuck that person, and you probably still feel that way about them. But I'm curious if you have any sort of that resentment towards some people where like I would love to see them just get slapped in the face once so they know exactly how that feels because they've never been slapped before like they should have been.
Um, I don't generally consider myself a vindictive person.
Mhm.
I obviously have moments where I'm like, man, I would love to see them get the shit beaten out of
Mhm.
them because wow, they did some really fucked up things to me. But I also try to think of it as like that's a them problem.
Right.
If they want to be an ass to me, I don't need them in my life, one. Especially if it's like in the space of pro wrestling, right? Like I can avoid certain people if I want to avoid them. Um, in jobs, like previous jobs I've had people that were in charge of me that were those kind of people, and I'm like, I don't know how I'm gonna survive this. But a lot of it is just like I know that they're being shitty towards me because of something that is wrong with them or that they're dealing with. And I
Yeah.
think being able to separate that helps a lot. Like it's still not going to cure everything. I'm not going to be like, nah, well, that's because you're dealing with some shit. So I'm fine because you're treating me like shit. Like it doesn't work like that. But I
Right.
think knowing that, like, okay, I've done everything that I can do to mitigate me being a huge problem for them to do whatever, then that kind of releases me from that a little bit. Like I'm not going to be the reason that they're having a shitty day or like they've clearly got some other stuff going on. So I'm going to do my best to not add to that. But if they're going to take it out on me, I'm still going to feel really shitty because like I don't like being treated like shit. Like just that nobody likes being treated that way.
Right. Right.
But kind of knowing like, okay, well, there's probably nothing that I directly did. They're probably dealing with some stuff that I have no idea what they've gone through. And it's like, I only know what I've gone through and I can empathize with a lot of different things. Um, and I feel like I go through the like, man, I would love to see them get slapped in the face once.
Yeah.
But then it's like, I think that thought, and then it's kind of like, I don't stay in that. where I try not to like sit in that because then
Do you,
it brings me down.
but do you consider yourself a forgiving person for that then?
I try to be as much as possible. I mean, there's certain unforgivable things,
Right.
like, but it's like if you're just gonna hold on to the negative energy, you're gonna bring yourself down.
Right.
So why would I want to bring myself down for something that someone else did?
Right.
That's on them. Especially if they don't feel guilty about it, then I should not be feeling down about it because like they're not feeling any kind of shitty feeling about it. And I'm holding on to that shitty feeling. Like, no, that's giving them power. Why would I want to do that? They're treating me that way.
Okay. Well, I wanted to dive in with you on something uh in particular about uh with regards to the the different things you've gone through with regards to the various experiences you've had. You talked before about South America. You made your trip down there. You were up in Brazil. You came across somebody on the bus, and they invited you to their house, etc. And I'm fascinated with that story, but I was also fascinated to see like other stories that I think what I'm like really was curious about, like what really has changed for you about that particular trip in general. That like I wouldn't say change as a person, maybe change as a person, but more like left an impression on you that gave you a better outlook in life. That when you came back here, you thought like, um, I feel like there's something better for me out there now. Now that I've went through this, like if it's at least something to that effect. I'm wondering like if you had something that left with you that you still carry to this day because of the trip you had in South America.
I mean, I almost moved to Brazil.
Right. I remember you mentioned that.
That's how impactful it was for me. I just it's something about like being surrounded by an entire like culture of people that just like spread love, right? Like super caring. Oh, heck did Midas get out? You just pushed my door open. Um, just being surrounded by like, and obviously it's not 100% of the people, right? But overall, like every Brazilian that I met out there was so nice, so welcoming, just like openly like kind. Um, and it just like there wasn't this like weird air of like negative. Like I don't know. I went to school in like close to LA, right? In
Mhm.
California. And there's something about certain parts of LA where you walk around, it's like, ugh, I just feel shitty now. And like there's certain good things about it. I love the museums out there. I love a lot of things about LA. But it's like you get in that traffic and you're like, this sucks. Why am I here?
Mhm.
Um, I didn't really have any of those moments when I was in Brazil, like any part of Brazil. And I mean, backpack all the way up. And then on top of that, like the food was amazing and everything else. But it was just like getting to meet all these different people and how they just live their life with like just kindness. I mean, I met Nisma on a bus and she invited me into her home for like a week. And she was a lawyer. So she literally would wake up, make breakfast, and then go to work and then tell her work, like, hey, I have guests at the house, so I'm gonna leave early. And then come home early. I learned how to stand up paddle for the first time with her. Um, and like she just took me all around the city, like just showing me all the things. Like I had only planned to be there for 2 days in Brasilia, and I ended up being there for a week.
Right.
And it was like all this stuff that I would have never done before. But it's just because she went out of her way for a complete stranger to be like, hey, here's me and my city and everything. Like the amount of just like open kindness to people and strangers, like it was wild.
Why do you think that in Brazil, most people, in this case, when you met your friend out there, that they are so open to that, but here in America, not so much?
I think I'm not really, I think especially as kids, like the US is a absolute clusterfuck of people, right? Like
Right, right.
it's the melting pot, which is great. I love that for us. However, there's a lot of hate that's like still being figured out over the years. And I feel like we're starting to fight like we're starting
Oh, it's
as a
funny.
society to like not be so hateful, but there's still a lot of it. And there's a lot of like really weird like why is there so much racism and sexism and all these different things going on that like it it just kind of blows my mind because everywhere else that I've traveled, it is not really like that at all.
So
No
do you
one gives a fuck what color your skin is. No one cares what gender you're like. I don't know. I don't know.
so like when you so in Brazil, for example, in Brazil to be specific, the time that you were there, so with your friend, you've had that welcoming experience and a very loving experience in terms of like, they're sharing everything, all these the city, their lives and whatever else. Outside of her meeting the people out there, was it the reception exactly the same too? Like, oh, you come inside over here, we're good with shit. Like, was it consistent all across the board
I
in
went
that
to her
respect?
coworker's birthday party,
Oh, oh
and
wow, that's so
yeah,
funny.
and they like the person whose birth I don't forget don't remember his name. But he was so nice, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, it's so good to meet you! Like, it's my birthday. Come on in. Here's some food." Like, what? Like, I feel like if I did that, if I brought somebody, a stranger, a clear stranger from another country to someone's birthday party
Right.
here, they'd be like, okay, like kind of hesitant.
But do you think that's a cultural thing here in America too? Because I mean, if you think about it, melting pots of people.
Yeah.
You have various backgrounds. Brazilians here as well too.
Yeah.
Do you think a Brazilian living here would still feel have the same welcoming approach that they would back at home?
I feel like people that I've run into here that are genuinely from other countries, like first generation over, are like that.
Okay.
It's like it's like once you start to get like second, third, fourth, and they kind of like have been in America,
Mm.
and it starts to like kind of dissipate.
So like they start to become uh, customized to the
Yeah,
culture that is. So you think that America in general, the culture is kind of like not standoffish, but more like we have to vet you out
competition.
first.
Yeah,
Competition. Okay.
I think it's a competition. I think it's like we get this whole like the American dream, right? And they like it's all trying to like get up the ladder, but I feel like a lot of times it's like people trying to yank people off the top rungs to get there instead of like, hey, let's link arms and go up together. Um,
Mm.
it's like I don't know, it's just a weird like traveling all over the place and then coming home. It's like I'm confused by a lot of things now because I'm like I don't really understand where a lot of it comes from or originates.
So I talked to my son about this quite literally maybe less than a few weeks ago. Um, so my parents are Nicaraguan, and one of the first times I went to Nicaragua as a kid, I'll never forget this experience that I had. But the first time I went to Nicaragua, I remember I immediately wanted to leave. It was boiling hot over there. But then once I stayed there, I wouldn't say accustomed to the weather, but I got accustomed to a lot what you described. Like, go come inside, especially my mom and my grandparents, everyone knew each other over there. So I remember loving that. But it took a while for me to get to that point. And then when I went back, obviously I was a little slightly older, but I love the friendly atmosphere. And I'll never forget when I came back home one time. I think it might have been after the third or fourth time, but I remember coming back home and being in Nicaragua was a third world country, but yes, it is a third world country, but I never felt like it was a third world place, if that makes any sense. Because my experience are rather, although I was a visitor there, but it was rather positive for the most part. Food was phenomenal. Some got me more sick than others, but it was a great
Yeah.
experience. And then when I came back home here, this is when I was still living in Virginia, I remember distinctly telling myself, I was like, we are so spoiled here that we have it so easy. And it wasn't until that for me, it wasn't until me coming back from Nicaragua that made me realize that, and I never let go of that thought process. I mean, I've forgotten about it at times, but I eventually get back to it. So I guess my question to you is that when you start seeing the lifestyle in Brazil and who you've hung out with and the various people you come across in South America, obviously not as some places nowhere near as affluent as here, and even some places we don't think is very affluent, more so than over there, right? But the way that people carry themselves, conduct themselves, do you think a lot of it has to do with the fact that they realize what's more important, like the people that they're surrounding with, and then we've got these things, let's help our friends over here. Like, do you think that mentality has been so embedded into them throughout the years since they were kids and the kids before them, et cetera, that that's part of the culture now? Here in America, not so much. I mean, you may have some of that in some places, but I'm wondering, like, if you think that in time that you think that that will change here in America, that we may get to that point, or is it just too far deep into the rabbit hole that in order for that to happen, it's got to implode from the inside for it to be, you know, maybe we should be friendlier, after all this shit that went down.
Yeah, it's like I almost thought that that was going to be what happened in 2020 when COVID hit,
Oh yeah.
and we all went through this like mass insaneness
Yeah.
together. And it's like that like quote ended, and then it was like right back to where we started. So it's like I would love to think that at some point we would all have that mindset of like, hey, like help your neighbor, do the things like, and there's some places in America that are like that, but it's like, I don't know.
Like far between it from my experience.
Yeah. And it's so weird to me. Like I've been to places like I was in Africa in 2019. It would have been right before COVID.
Mm.
And I was helping out, like I was volunteering for this orphanage out there. And obviously, I mean, absolutely like we're staying in mud huts type of thing. Like, and they're some of the happiest, most like helpful, warm, welcoming people I've ever met. And I'm like looking at it as like, okay, I have a home, right? I have all these things. I have all this stuff that I do. And that's not like they don't even have a fraction of the stuff that I grew up with or have currently. And they're more willing to give what they have because you're in need or you're whatever, and they want to share their part of the world with you, and they want you to see like, hey, this is my culture, like come in and learn about us, like we want to share this. And it's like, why are we not all like that? Like I love sharing my story with it. Like that's why I don't really believe that there's like a too personal question for me, because it's like I love sharing my story with people because I know that like people can relate to lots of different parts of it. And it's like I've learned so many things and I've seen so many things that it's like I just want to share that with the world. I want to share that kindness that was given to me so many times over. I just want to share that with everybody.
So this is an interesting perspective that I'm picking up from you, but because we early in the conversation you talked about how, this is about me. You're traveling around, some relationships as far as like friends and family, they've gotten used to you just being nomadic and probably have not physically seen you in maybe some cases decades,
Yeah.
years. And yet you still communicate with them in some way, shape, or form, whether it be like, hey, happy birthday, and then that's the end of it until next year. But with you just talking about how in Brazil, mostly everybody was very welcoming to you. You go to Africa, you live in huts, and some of the kindest people you've ever met that are willing to share whatever little bit they have left to give to you, no matter for whatever reasons that may be, whether it be a small one or a big one, whatever. And you talked about how you look at yourself back at home, you have all these things and they have none or a fraction of that, if that, and that yet they're absolutely happy. But when you come back into this here, and you're happy in the pro wrestling field, and then you think about, well, I got to break even. I got to do this. I got to do this, and I got to keep doing this. I'm hearing you say the beautiful side of like what you've experienced, and I'm sure there's a lot of hardships you saw as well too, and probably you've gone through yourself that gave you that perspective on how you look at yourself and life and whatever else. But when you go back into doing this, where this is a business, I have a look, I have this, I have that, and although you're telling me you enjoy it so much, as far as like what you get out of it, but I'm hearing the dichotomy of like the people that had little to nothing and they gave you some of the best experience you've ever had. You have this experience for yourself, which helped you in a lot of ways too. But in my mind, I'm thinking at some point, like that probably would have helped you a lot more than pro wrestling did, if that makes any sense. So I guess I'm curious about how you balance it out for yourself about what your priorities in life really is at the end of the day. Like, what really is your end game? Because that's why I see, this is why I feel like, at least from my perspective, and you let me know if I'm wrong, the pro wrestling is probably one thing that can push you out there as far as like Audrey Allen's concerned, the person, the trademark, whatever it is. But I really think people would be more interested in hearing, well, I went to Africa and this is what I saw. And this is what some of the worst experience I've ever had, but some of the best ones I've had too. And the best ones made up for all of it because of X, Y, and Z. And then for someone to hear that story, they'll probably get more out of that than when's your next wrestling match. I'm not saying that, they're going to disregard that, but I'm wondering like how you find the balance for what's a priority, what's more important for you. Because when you think about the business side of it here, the people you met over there, they give two shits about that. They probably will be excited to hear that you're a pro wrestler, but they're probably going to be more interested in how was your day at the end of the day. You see what I'm saying? So where do you find that balance for yourself about where not to lose so much focus on what's really important, if that makes any sense?
I mean, the end game is just happiness.
Right.
And a lot of that is just following where the universe kind of takes me and ebb and flow with it. There are a lot of times where I'm like, I should just sell everything, including my house, and take my backpack and go somewhere again. Yeah, I'm fine. When I backpacked South America, it was with a 32-liter pack. Like, that was it. And I overpacked. And so it was like, I know that me as a person, I don't need a lot to live. I don't need a lot to function. Do I have super cool stuff now that helps me create? Yeah, I love having the different things that I have to make stuff and do things.
Right.
And like, but there's a lot of times where I'm like, I don't need it. It makes me happy. I love being like, oh my gosh, I can make this set of gear for this show and do this and this. Like, it gets me all excited inside. I get to talk to people about it. But like, that's the goal. It's not really anything that's like tangible per se. Like, I don't have like, oh, I need to own this and I need to do this and I need to do this. It's like, it's just being happy in that moment, which is why, like, if 10 years down the line, they're like, we don't need Audrey Allen anymore. It's like, cool. Okay. Well, I'm going to find something else.
What am I do all this merchandise back here now?
Right. It's like, there comes, everything ends. Everything ends at some point. And like, even us, right? Like, there's an end date. Do we know what it is?
Right.
No, not generally. But I would rather, whenever I die, be like, man, I did some cool stuff. Like, I lived my life and I was happy. Instead of like, well, I made $1 million, so. And no one cares. You don't take that with you when you die.
Right. So when if your life were to end today or tomorrow, you would be very content with what you've done so far up to this point, where you're like that. Obviously, not so much the material things that you've been able to gain, but really more or less the experiences, the people you've met, the highs and lows from the set experiences. And you look back and you say, if I were to leave today, I lived a good life and I'm happy with what I've been able to accomplish so far. You would feel content with that?
Yeah, I think if I were to die tomorrow, right?
Right.
I was happy. I did all the things that I wanted, like I did what I wanted to do at every point for the most part. Like I was directed in places, I was happy doing them. And then I also made an impact on other people and I shared that happiness with other people. And I think that that's what it's all about. You get to like, it's not just about the impact on the other people and it's not just about my happiness. It's like the combination of it all is like, because there's so many people that like spread happiness and joy and kindness, but they were super, super struggling, right? Like we hear about it all the time with like them being super depressed, but they're like a comedy actor, right? And they end up ending their life early or whatever. But it's like I really feel like all the experiences that I've had, I feel like I've lived 1,000 lifetimes, and I'm only 31. Like I literally like there's just so much that I've done, and I amaze myself sometimes when I think about it. I'm like, man, yeah, I did all of that. Like that seems like some people don't accomplish some of these things in their whole lifetime. And I just did it because either I was bored, I just wanted to learn a new thing, and I just thought it'd be cool and I wanted to. And yeah, I would be content. I think I've also been in so many circumstances where like your next day isn't guaranteed.
Right.
And so I feel like that helps put a perspective on things of like, man, if I really were to just be ended tomorrow, like why would I be focusing on this other little bullshit, you know?
What's one thing that you would like to experience that you've I'm not talking about like something like skydiving or I want to visit this part. Like, I'm genuinely asking more about like I guess the side of the story of your life where you haven't seen your friends and family in some time. Is that something you would like to do one day? Like, I want it because if you travel around, right? And let's say one day you say, I'm going to go back to California and visit my mom and dad. Like, is that something that crosses your mind? Like, I've been everywhere, but I haven't been back home in a while. Let me just do that. Like, does that cross your mind about, I'm just going to show up one day randomly and give my mom and dad a hug or something to that effect?
I think about it, I think more lately too. My parents are getting older. My dad's in his 70s.
Mm,
And he's had some health struggles. So I think I've been thinking about that a lot more recently because I'm like, man, if I would probably feel bad if something were to happen and I've been like, man, I didn't see my dad for the last few years. Because I'm pretty sure it's been a while. Like it's been a few years at
right.
least that since I've seen my like parents in person. We talk on the phone a lot, but I would feel really guilty if I hadn't seen him in the last few years of his life. And that it just happened with my uncle last year. And I had literally planned to see him on a Tuesday. I was going to drive all the way up there. It was like a 9-hour drive. And I was going to help them move and do all this stuff. I didn't because I was busy. I didn't want to drive. I was just, and like the logistics were all off. There wasn't anywhere for me to stay up there. It was just this whole thing. And I was like, well, I'll help later. And he literally passed the next day. And I was on the phone with him and he was like, this may be the last time I talk to you. I was like, don't say that. I'm like, I'm coming in a couple days. Like, just don't say that to me. And he was like, no, I feel it. And I was like, like, no, because if you do, I'm gonna feel really bad about it. And sure enough, next day. So it's like you never know how long you have with certain people. And I definitely like that's why I at least stay in contact with people. I call them, they know that I'm around. I feel like they can at least feel my love for them, even if it's through the phone. But yeah, it's definitely different when you can give them a big old hug and squeeze them as tight as you can and do all that kind of stuff. So I do think about going back to California, especially. I'm like, man, if I could find some wrestling promotions out there and get flown out there and then see everybody and
Jeez.
have them see me wrestle. Like that'd be really cool.
Oh my God.
But I'm just like, man, that'd be dope because then it's like I can do all these
Oh
things.
man. That must be. I can only imagine how awkward that'd be for your parents. Like, so you came out here just for a wrestling show? No, no, I came to see you, but I got to be there at 9 o'clock tonight, though. You know.
Right. But like you're coming to the show, right? Like
Yeah, yeah. I'm just teasing, of course. I think one of the reasons I told you the first time I met you was that why I wanted to talk to you is because Steve and Katie are friends of mine, and you happen to be along for the engagement that the proposal. I meant to say, not the engagement, the proposal. And I remember when Steve called me about that and told me, and it was one of those things where I was surprised to see that there was somebody else there, and that person happened to be you. And to me, I thought that, well, if they are there, I'm going to say, if they were there for a reason, it had to be for a really, really good reason. So, I had reached out to you, and then I think I talked to Katie, and I said, hey, I reached out to your friend Audrey. Oh, I'll put in a good word for you, and then the rest is history.
yeah.
And now I can see why you were part of that very pivotal moment for them. And there was a lot more that I really wanted to learn from you, and the amount of time that I did spend with you at the show, and got some insight about how you look, how you conduct yourself, and how you take this very seriously, and the time you invest into it, and so on. Not that it surprised me. I guess I was more. I'm not sure if it's the best way to say it, but I was really impressed with what the dedication you have for what you're doing. And this is a very like the entertainment industry in general, it's a very fickle business. Some go at it for years before they can get a break, and if you want to call break as in like they get a paycheck at the end of the day, like kind of like what you're going through right now, then it's a goal for them in mind. But it's either you love it or you hate it, and it's nothing in between. And I'm happy that you love it. You came across it by chance, and now you're doing something that you really love. And the fact you happen to quit your job and do this full time because you happen to be in green now, I'm actually really happy to hear that. So it makes me appreciative of how people, in this case, someone as yourself that wasn't a fan of it, came across it by chance and has made something out of it. Call it destiny, whatever people believe in this, if they believe in that sort of stuff. But I'm glad it happened to you based upon what I've heard you share. And I still stand by it. I think you would make a great host sharing these wonderful stories, whether it be by yourself or with somebody else. And I also think you'd be a great interviewer as well, too, someone you can make conversations with, because you have so much experience to understand the value of time and why listening is very important. Because you've been able to have those experiences, you're able to share that I've heard this story, and I'm pretty sure from what you've heard, you'll relate it almost accurately. So I hope you do that. And I'm going to say this not for business purposes, but I hope you become successful at that, because I think there's so much more you have to offer. That storytelling, in my opinion, is probably your greatest gift that you can offer. So I hope you really do that one day. And if whenever you do, which I believe you will, I hope it turns out successful for you. So that way you find something else to add onto your list that you'd be even more successful at, if that makes any sense. So this is me essentially giving your flowers to you for all that you've accomplished, and then what I hope to see you accomplish more down the line here. So I mean, right now, as of this recording, I know you have an event coming this Saturday, but I guess in a few weeks' time, this episode will be uploaded here. But I don't know if there's anything you are able to share that you can have people anticipate to look out for, that they can keep an eye on for you if they want to follow you with your story, your career, and where they can check you out in the near future down the line here.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I post to social media. I'm Audrey the Wrestler on all the socials, pretty much. Most active on Instagram and Facebook, of course. Then I actually have audreythewrestler.com. It's a website. It's got my calendar everywhere that I'm going to be. It's obviously got a link to my merch and other stuff. But yeah, it's got my whole calendar of events. Pretty much anywhere that I'm showing up as Audrey Allen and wrestling and doing whatever, I put in there. So it's a really nice visual that people can look at.
It's a wonderful website too. I've got a chance to visit on a few occasions here, so I do urge everybody to check it out here. But so for the cameras, I'm going to say to you, thank you for giving me your time. I was looking forward to this conversation for quite some time. I know your schedule has been very busy, so the fact that you've been able to give me this amount of time means a lot to me. And the stories you've been able to share as a result of that as well too, your experiences and the various other things we were able to get into here. I've taken a lot from it as well, but I'm most looking forward to see what you decide to follow through with here. And I have no doubt you'll be successful, if not more, at following that said new path here. So for the cameras, I want to say thank you. Until next time, cheers to you.
Thank you.